Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. Lo'ingo o Susana Suisuiki. Coming up.
Most of our people dying from heart diseases and followed by diabetes and hypertension.
The head of health in the Cook Islands says fighting NCDs is a top priority for the country. Also,
we're all disappointed because we put our maximum effort there.
The Flying Fijians almost defeat Wales in their Rugby World Cup match. Elisa Tora has more. And later, the stage is set in Otago, New Zealand for its 30th Polyfest. The Cook Islands has shifted its focus from fighting COVID-19 to fighting non-communicable diseases, or NCDs. The country's Secretary of Health, Bob Williams, spoke to a crowd of about 600 Pacific health professionals who made the trip over to Rarotonga for the Pacifica Medical Association conference. Mr. Williams says about half of people living in the Cook Islands have NCDs. He spoke with Caleb Fotheringham.
It seemed like staffing was a big issue that you were talking about, including a lot of other Pacific countries. What's the problem with your staff? Where do you need the gaps to be filled?
Most of them are nurses. Although we were able to recruit some to replace those, most of them are expatriate workers who left for New Zealand and Australia. But at the same time, we managed to recruit some doctors from Myanmar and nurses from Fiji. But currently, we're still short on the ground. At the moment, we're managing with the current workforce that we have here, especially on Rarotonga.
You also talked about NCDs, a big problem across the Pacific. What's the current stats with the Cook Islands?
Yeah, almost half of our population have NCDs, whether just diabetes or some have more than one, whether it be diabetes, hypertension, and some with heart diseases. Most of our people dying from heart diseases and followed by diabetes and hypertension. So it is for those reasons now that we've been pushing our Healthy Island and Smoke-Free Island initiatives to the Paino. So 4 islands has been done so far since February, and we've done one school here in Rarotonga, and the aim is to get across at least 2 more schools here on Rarotonga to be healthy schools. Aitutaki, we'll be going to Aitutaki after the conference and then pushing up north before the end of the year. So hopefully by the end of the year, we've pushed across the Healthy Island, Smoke-Free Island project right across the islands here in the Cook Islands. And part of that, of course, is to address the rate of NCD. There's been 4 focus in terms of our Healthy Island programs. One is drinking water, so getting our people to drink more water and less fizzy drinks, sugary drinks. And second is getting our people to get more active, so introducing activities in our paino. And also for oral health, we found across the 4 islands that we've done so far, and all the schools here in Rarotonga, the oral health conditions of our children is not very good. And also RHD screening for rheumatic heart diseases. It was good in Moke, no new cases detected, but all the other islands that we've gone through, including Rarotonga, there has been some confirmed rheumatic heart disease children that has been detected, and some borderline. And also we've included NCD screening and men's health screening in this Healthy Island initiative.
Would you say those are we touched on quite a few things, but is that sort of the main priority post-COVID? Is that sort of what you're looking at?
Yes, definitely. It is addressing, trying to manage and reduce the rate of NCD in the Cook Islands. It's a priority for our country, the Cook Islands, to reduce the rate of NCD by 25 years into the future. And of course, looking at obesity, concentrating on our children.
A geopolitics analyst says some Pacific countries who oppose Japan's Fukushima treated water release are bowing to China. The Melanesian Spearhead Group Secretariat has condemned Japan's decades-long release of treated nuclear wastewater into the Pacific Ocean, with the exception of Fiji's leader who says the science stacks up. Former intelligence and defense policy analyst and consultant to U.S. government security agencies, Paul Buchanan, told Lydia Lewis the Fukushima issue has become more of a geopolitical and diplomatic problem than a scientific one.
Japan is burdened by its own history. You know, the Japan presence in the South Pacific during World War II was not a happy one, and there are historic memories that are associated with that, cast Japan in a negative light. Then there's the very, very reasonable anti-nuclear sentiment that goes back to the French testing days, the American testing days, and the destruction that they wrought on small island states. That all is true and is reasonable, but here's where they run afoul of the science. The science simply points to North Pacific gyre and the various currents that are its component parts. None of the water that's being discharged off the coast of Japan will ever make it down to the South Pacific. Again, just basic physics and atmospherics tell us that there is no cause of concern in the South Pacific. And yet, that anti-nuclear sentiment is translated into opposition not only by activists, but by some of the governments that are members of the Pacific Island Forum. And unfortunately, I would say that this is born more of ignorance than of rational concerns about the spillover effects of this treated water, and may actually, hang on to lingering historical distrust of the Japanese, to which I would add that the Japanese have not ingratiated themselves to people with their whaling activities. And so you have a combination of anti-Japan sentiment with anti-nuclear sentiment, all against the backdrop of Japan's behavior in World War II up to the present day when it comes to issues like whaling. And so I think there's a fundamental distrust when it comes to the honesty of the Japanese, at least in the perception of Pacific Island activist communities and some of their government leaders, when it comes to events like this. Either people do not trust the Japanese and for some reason do not believe what the UN and the IAEA have said when it comes to the science of this treated water, or they're simply ignorant of the science and are allowing their distrust of the Japanese to overcome them.
Speaking about that distrust, Melanesian spearhead group leaders have recently said as a collective that they strongly urged Japan not to discharge the water. They released that statement after the discharge started.
Well, I think that we have to understand, again, the geopolitics of the equation matter most. The MSG, as well as the Pacific Island Forum, have one eye on China and the other eye on Japan. We have to remember that China is a major provider of developmental assistance. And so China has come out forcefully against the Japanese, again, in complete violation of the science. And I think that these states are acting more to stay in line with the Chinese and keep that pipeline open to them when it comes to developmental assistance, because the Japanese don't provide hardly any anymore in the South Pacific, so they're an easy mark. It's easy to sit in the South Pacific and criticize Japan because there will be no harm accrued because of that. And so I think it's an easy way out for the MSG to appear to be on the side of the Chinese when it comes to this dispute. Again, the Chinese are doing it for non-scientific reasons. They're not, friendly with Japan at all. And so that combination of geopolitical factors, I think, is what's behind the opposition to the wastewater discharges up in Japan. But again, all in violation or ignorance of basic atomic science. And that's the worrisome thing in this day and age, is that increasingly we're seeing anti-science rhetoric and narratives taking over, not only amongst activists and conspiracy theorists and those sort of folk, but in governments, and not just in small island states either. It's infiltrated into some of the mainstream discourse, dare I say it, to include in New Zealand. And so what we've got is more of a geopolitical and diplomatic problem than we do have a scientific problem. And unfortunately, I believe that geopolitical and diplomatic problems are more insurmountable than scientific ones are.
So where to from here? This is happening for decades.
Well, I mean, this is the first of these treatments from this particular plant, which is about to be decommissioned. So obviously the Japanese will have to take note of the opposition to the discharges. They will clearly note that there are groups, including groups in government in other states, that don't care about the science. They're all about, diplomatic point scoring and catering to their constituent bases. But I think that other than that, there will be more and more rigor applied to nuclear waste treatment. And I guess the thing that we need to think about, because it's coming down to the South Pacific, is that the South Pacific is a nuclear-free zone. That includes not only weapons, although we know that nuclear submarines possibly with nuclear weapons transit the South Pacific on a regular basis, but with this new AUKUS agreement between the United States, the UK, and Australia to deliver nuclear submarines to the Australians, beginning in 2024, we have the makings of a violation of the Treaty of Rarotonga, which is what declares the nuclear-free zone.
That was geopolitics analyst Paul Buchanan talking to Lydia Lewis about the Fukushima fallout and nuclear issues across the Pacific. The Flying Fijians came excruciatingly close to winning their first game of the Rugby World Cup, but it was not to be. Fiji pressed for a try at the death, but a dropped ball saw Wales hold on 32-26. Wales had previously led 32-14 before Fiji came roaring back. Captain and earlier try scorer Waisia Nayadalevu told Sky Sport it's tough, but they will learn from it.
Tough one. We're all disappointed because we put our maximum effort there. I think I can say credit to the boys for the effort today. We work until the end. And the last pass, man, it's quite hard for us. We're going to learn from there and then we move on.
RNZ Pacific senior sports journalist Elias Sotora is in Bordeaux, and he spoke with Koroi Hawkins shortly after the Wales match.
Well, I think Fiji played above expectation in the game against Wales. They started well, they competed well, and they ended, going into over 80 minutes. A lot of pluses from the game that Coach Simon Rewalui and the players would be taking into account as they move forward. Unfortunately, it was a comeback too late. There were some calls that they had questions in the game, but Wales was able to make use of the opportunities they had.
They got 2 bonus points out of this. How does this set them up for the rest of the pool play? And I guess what's the mountain to climb now?
Yes, that 2 points will work for them towards the qualifications for quarterfinal. But they will need to win against Australia and win the other two matches that they have to be able to get into the quarterfinal. It's tit for tat, especially now with Wales winning that pool match and Australia also doing well in the first pool game. So for Fiji, they need to win against Australia and win their other 2 pool matches after that to be able to qualify.
Now you've been in Bordeaux for a few days now. What's the fan support like for Fiji, and how have the people you've been talking to there, and in the stands obviously today as well?
Yeah, the people here in Bordeaux, the locals in Bordeaux, support Fiji. They've come out in support of the team. They've been talking about Fiji and their hopes that Fiji would win against Wales. And today, there were local fans who were cheering for Fiji. And of course, the big contingent of Fijians who came from all over Europe coming to support the Flying Fijians. But Fijian rugby is a big thing for the French. They love the way the Flying Fijians play and the Pacific play of throwing the ball around and getting the open free play in the open field and with the big hits. That is something that the French love to see because that is also the game that they now also play. A big hit up front and free-flowing rugby once they get the ball in hand.
First cab off the rank for the Pacific teams at the World Cup. What are the next Pacific games coming up?
Chile and Samoa are playing. Tonga is meeting Ireland, and then Fiji, Australia. So those are the three games that are going to be happening next weekend. Of course, Tonga and Samoa are taking a rest. We're on by this weekend, and we'll get their first games next week.
Ilesa, thank you so much for your time. I know it's getting late or getting early now for you. So thank you so much for coverage, and looking forward to your reports through the tournament.
From Bodo.
Fiji's next match is against Australia in the early hours of Monday, September 18th.